So let me start by saying that the Sigma FP has a beautiful image quality, but if you're interested in buying this camera, there are a few quirks that you need to know about. Now the first quirk is that if you're recording it in 12-bit cinema DNG, if you do not have the right USB-C cable, your camera will only record for about 6 seconds. This happened to me at a wedding and I was using a Thunderbolt 4 cable, and still, even with a cable that powerful, the camera was only recording for about 6 seconds. Luckily, I did have the right cable, and this was right before the ceremony started, so I was able to plug in the right cable and my camera acted correctly. At the moment, I am using the Sigma FP as my C cam for weddings, and I will be buying another one to use as another ceremony camera for my vows and also the speeches during receptions. In the same wedding that I actually used this camera on, it really saved my groom shot, because if I wasn't shooting in RAW, then I would have had to expose the subject in a certain way that my highlights probably would have been blown, because this ceremony wasn't at sunset, and even though it wasn't at midday, it was still pretty bright out. But because I was shooting in RAW, I was able to expose for my highlights, then I was able to bring back my groom in post. Now the second quirk is that the Sigma FP can charge its battery via USB-C, but that's only when the camera is turned off. Another thing is that the camera only have one USB-C port, and that make it harder because I do love to record in cinema DNG. So right now when I have the Sigma FP rigged up, I am just running it off the camera batteries. I do have the dummy battery, but at the moment I'm still trying to find the right connector that I can use to actually charge my camera with. Now the third quirk is that this camera do not have a log profile. Now this is not a con for me, but for some of you who worry about file size, I understand why you would want a log profile. Sometimes it is nice just to shoot straight out of the camera. You have a really nice profile that you can use to color grade. But like I said, for me, I would rather record in cinema DNG. But here's the caveat. You can actually record in cinema DNG, but instead of 12-bit, you can actually record it in 10-bit. And you'll still have some of the same flexibility, but the file sizes will be a lot smaller. Now the next quirk is that I hear that the false color only works at 100 ISO. This is not a con for me because anytime I'm using my Sigma FP or my X-H2S, I'm always using a monitor and I'm always using a LUT to expose with. Now I'm just using a Rec 709 LUT that I made inside of DaVinci Resolve. So as long as I can see where I'm exposing and my highlights or my shadows, or even for my raw video, I'm okay with using a monitor. And to be honest, since the monitor on the FP do not tilt or swivel out, you will always have to use an external monitor to see what you're recording. Now the next quirk is that this camera do not have a grip. For me, it's not a con because anytime I'm using my FP, I always have a cage on it. This camera really wasn't meant to be used in a run and gun scenario. It was actually meant to be used in a production setting. So in order to get the best image quality out of this camera, you will always have to rig it up. And honestly, not really for the image, but you have to rig it up just to make it a functional camera. Think of your Blackmagic Pixels, think of your Red Komodo X, think of your higher end cinema cameras. Yes, you want to get the brain, and those brains do come with a monitor or like a box style camera, but you will always have to rig those cameras up to make it functional for your shoot, no matter what the purpose is, and the Sigma FP is no different. Now the next quirk or con is that the Sigma FP do not have autofocus. For me, that is not a con because anytime I'm using that camera, I'm always running it with a Canon FD lens, and I'm planning to buy 2 more so I can have a complete set just for my Sigma FP. Like I said guys, this is a cinema camera, and most of your cinema cameras do not have autofocus, or at least autofocus that you can really rely on. If you want a camera with really good autofocus, you should really stick with mirrorless cameras, because cinema cameras are not really for one-man bands, especially if you're trying to run it with cinema lenses. Yes, you can do it yourself, but if you want to get the best image quality or make your best film, you should always have a team in place. Now again, for me, it's not a big deal because I love running FD lenses on my Sigma FP. I bought this camera to use it purely as a cinema camera, and I know that most cinema cameras do not have good autofocus. Like I said, for me it's not a con, it's just something I expect with this style of camera. Now another quirk or con of this camera that it only has 11 or 11.5 working stops of dynamic range, but it's rated at 13. But honestly, if you're shooting in RAW and you know how to expose your camera, or you know how to expose RAW, honestly you can't tell. I use this camera during noon, I use this camera during sunset, and honestly as long as you expose right, like for me I like to expose for my highlights, You can't tell that this camera only have 11.5 stops of dynamic range once you start working with it in post. Like I said, I like to expose for my highlights, and then when I move it inside of DaVinci Resolve, I'll bring my shadows back using my raw tab. Now this is the opposite of what I do when I'm shooting in a log profile, because when I'm shooting in log, I like to expose to the right. But when I'm using Cinema DNG or even Apple ProRes RAW, I always rather expose for my highlights, so most of the time I'm exposing to the left. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, this is just a quick video talk about a few quirks when it comes to using the Sigma FP. And I also wanted to make this video because I know in the last video, and most of us when we talk about our favorite cameras, we make it seem like it's the perfect camera. And for us it may be, but for you it may not be. So that's why I decided to make this video talking about quirks of the camera. And I am looking to make a relationship with Sigma. I did talk to one of their reps during Sigma FP Day, and it was an awesome experience. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this video was just out the blue. I will be making another video before the New Year's is over with, so stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one. And make sure you subscribe. Peace.